have this show where you can get ideas to help you grow your eco-conscious business. And today I am joined by Joe Gregory from Creative with Nature, and we are talking about weaving your way up the high street. So welcome, Joe. So great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And I believe you've got lots of snow over there. So we're just hoping that the connection's going to be good, but I bet it looks beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's very beautiful.
Oh,
Cold, but very beautiful.
yeah. So Creative with Nature, it's a high street gallery, shop and community workspace that opened up 6 years ago. And Joe is also a master willow weaver and says that weaving has opened up so many possibilities and multiple positive connections for Creative with Nature. So we're going to leap into the questions because I know there's a lot of people excited to hear all about what you do and also how you've managed to kind of keep your business open on the high street when in tough times and when so many other people have had to shut down. So what made you decide to open your business on the high street?
It was very left field, actually. I never intended to have a shop. I was working from home and I'd totally taken over the kitchen and the living room. We didn't really have a functioning living room for a couple of years. And it got to the point where I was getting more and more commissions. It just wasn't workable anymore. And there's not enough dedicated business space in the town where I live. I was born here, I grew up in Todmorden, and I really, really wanted to stay here. So I was looking at mill spaces, shared art spaces, and there just wasn't anything that was appropriate to my needs because Willow's got quite specialist needs. And I just happened across a shop on the high street, on a very little high street, that had a notice in it. It was Marshall's Gentlemen's Outfitters, which it had been for decades. And John had finally decided to retire. He was in his 70s. And I thought, do you know what? I think I could actually make that work. I could sell my stuff, I could sell other people's stuff, and I could teach from there. And I literally just went for it.
Fantastic. So you actually bought the place rather than rent, and
I rented it. I rented it from John.
Okay.
So John actually still owns those buildings. No, I rented it from him. I put a little note through the door saying who I was and what I was intending to do. And he was interested. He thought it was a really interesting, quirky idea. So we had a meeting and I rented that place from him for 3 years. And then it was too small. I rented another building for a further 2 years, which was bigger. Further down the high street. Because of the way that Todmorden's laid out, we flood in parts of the centre and not in other parts of the centre. So my original shop never floods. The second shop, after 2 years, flooded really, really badly. And the day after I flooded, I'd inquired about another building to buy because my business was still growing. I inquired about this other building and it had already sold. So I gave up on it. And then I flooded. And the day after I flooded, the owner of that building got in touch with me and said, do you still want to buy it? And from February last year, when I flooded, I didn't know I was going to be buying the building. I'd moved into it by the end of May.
Wow, fantastic. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. And how did the artists and teachers and everything sort of find your space and come to work with you? Is it a lot of mainly local people?
Yeah, it was initially local and regional people. I think everyone was really. When I started my business, I wasn't just a willow weaver. I used to teach introductory permaculture workshops. I used to work for the Workers' Education Association, the WEA, and I was a forest school leader. So I had lots of different connections with different kinds of people, but over the years, actually quite a wide network of people. I didn't realize how many people I'd ended up connecting with. So when I got the shop, everyone was quite surprised, I think, and quite shocked. When I had the opening, there was a couple of hundred people. I was totally like, well, it was a tiny little shop. We spilled out into all the street and it was fantastic. So people found me. People were telling people that I was there and people kept coming. And it worked really, really well. I had monthly exhibitions, exhibitions. So I met so many artists and craftspeople for those first 3 years. And the building, my business has just carried on growing really. It's very community spirited is my business. The nature of it's very people orientated.
That is brilliant. And I'm a great lover of permaculture. I did a permaculture design certificate, so I know all about it. And yeah, fantastic. And so I can see how, that sort of fits in with what you're doing and how that's growing your community, because obviously there's the people care part of it is a very big part of permaculture and
It
building that
is, it is.
community.
It's the
Yeah.
most important part. I think if we can't look after each other and ourselves, then there's no hope for the environment and everything else. And I came to solely do the willow weaving because it ticks all the boxes. I can't do it on my own. It's too big a job. So I'm growing willow. There's no way I could do that on my own. So I have to regularly ask people for help. And the more you ask people for help, the more people do help and the easier it gets to ask for help. And because
Yeah.
what I do has a benefit to everybody, not just to me. Willow's a really thirsty tree, and I live in an area where we keep flooding. Growing lots and lots of willow helps with flood alleviation. And I get to educate people all the time about the importance of trees and the importance of managing things together. I don't know, I just every year when I ask for help, I always have lots of people who want to help.
Fantastic. And I know that you actually planted 4,000 willow trees.
Yeah, it sounds more than it is. When you put them in the ground, they're literally little sticks and you plant
Yeah.
them very close together. So the area in total that I take up is probably about half of an acre, but it's not in one
Wow.
little area, it's spread over two different sites. And
Okay.
I'm trying to increase it every year. My idea eventually is that we'll be producing most of our own willow locally. I do buy it locally anyway. I only ever use English willow, but it would be really nice to be able to say most of the willow that we use is Todmorden grown willow.
Fantastic. I mean, it's such a amazing resource, isn't it? Because you can use it to make so much. I mean, what are some of the things that you actually, make out of willow? What are some of
I
sort of
do a lot of sculpture, a lot of animal sculpture, a lot of basketry, but my main business actually is teaching other people. I really, really love teaching and passing on skills. And I, I think everybody should weave. I think we're designed to weave. It's the world's oldest craft by a really long way. Every culture on the planet weaves, has always woven. And if you think about just in our daily lives, we're surrounded by weaving. The clothes we're wearing are woven. Um, Everything that's, and until very recently, everything that was stored or moved was stored and moved in some kind of woven um, vessel, if you will. So it has, there's a kind of, I don't know what the right word is. I find when people start weaving in every class of only like 6 to 8 people, at least one person will go, "Oh my God, this is really calm. It's really therapeutic. I had no idea." And then everybody will start talking about it. It allows you space to become totally engrossed in a thing and not think about everything else. But at the same time, it can be really, really communal and allows conversations to take place,
mm.
really deep conversations that people wouldn't usually have. Um, it's just a really lovely thing to do.
Yeah, I was saying it's probably quite a mindful exercise. And I was actually chatting with a friend of mine the other day, and she said, we were talking about thread and weaving and how
Yeah.
it's always been as part, sort of, especially women, going back thousands, hundreds, thousands of years, it's always been
Well,
part of what you do.
yeah, absolutely. Traditionally, willow weaving's men's work, and I find it really fascinating because most of the people who come on my courses now are women. I do get men, and I'm getting more and more men. Especially when I started, it was solely women, and that's historically not the case. Historically, it's men's work because it's actually really physically demanding, and managing the material as well. It means being out in the fields and stuff. So I think craft and especially weaving is something that both men and women
Can
do.
do, yeah. And as you say, very therapeutic and communal, which is, yeah, it just ticks all the boxes, doesn't it? Plus, it's a renewable resource doing willow, so
Totally
that's
renewable. The
fantastic.
all the willow that we use is just one season's growth. So it's
Yeah.
just 1 year's growth, you cut it grows again, you cut it grows again, you cut it. And it really connects you to the seasons and the cycles of nature and just living how we're supposed to live. I'm always thinking about the next season because I've got things to plan for and to prepare for the next bit. And it very much ties you into the year, which is also
Yeah,
very
with the flow
challenging.
of the season. That's fantastic. So what would you say is your top eco business tip?
Foster relationships with people, be kind to everybody, because you never know the person that you're talking to or dealing with. You never know what's going to happen with them. The place where I grow my willow at the moment isn't my land. Land's at a real premium where I live, and it's really expensive. I could never afford to buy it. And a lovely lady called Monica came on one of my permaculture courses 7 or 8 years ago. And then she got in touch with me about 6 years ago and went, I've started growing some willow. Do you want to manage it? And that's how I've ended up becoming a willow grower, because I never intended to grow my own willow. So that would be my top tip, is to foster relationships with people. Be kind to everybody. Yeah, be open to new ideas and to people.
Fantastic. That was really good. So wrapping up the show, we can find you at creativewithnature.co.uk.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining us, Joe. Really interesting, and I'm really keen to sort of check out more of your website and what you do. And I'm sure there'll be lots of questions from people commenting on the show or people watching the replay. So if you are, please post your questions, everyone. And both Joe and I will keep an eye on those and get back to you. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. And to all our viewers, thank you for joining us. And we'll see you same time next week. Okay,
brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.